Get the fuck out of the car. The scream tore through the night, sharp and venomous, slicing the stillness of a lonely Georgia highway. Red and blue lights splashed against cracked asphalt. Alana Hayes, 62, sat frozen behind the wheel, her pressed church dress neat, her trembling hands raised high. She hadn't been speeding. She hadn't run a light, yet 3 officers swarmed her like predators circling prey. The first yanked open her door, the second seized her wrist with cruel force. The third hovered, his palm twitching over the butt of his pistol. Please, please. I didn't do anything, she whispered, breath quick and shallow. Her words were swallowed by chaos. Her body slammed against the pavement, gravel digging into her cheek. A boot crushed her shoulder, fingers ripped through her purse. She's got something. One of them barked, her heart raced. No, that's my inhaler. Please, I can't breathe, back the fuck up, now. She reached, desperate, wheezing. The shots cracked through the dark, echoing like hammers against steel. Silence followed. No sirens, no radio calls. Just the sound of wind moving across empty road. Blood pooled on the asphalt, tracing slow rivers around her outstretched hand. Her eyes, once warm and alive, stared wide and unblinking into nothing. The 3 men stood above her, their chests heaving, guns still hot with smoke. One lit a cigarette, the flame sparking briefly against the shadows, as if mocking the life they had just extinguished as the night swallowed everything, leaving only the body of a mother who would never make it home. Just hours earlier, the world had felt untouched, ordinary, almost tender in its simplicity. Marcus Hayes sat at his mother's kitchen table, the smell of cornbread drifting through the small house that had raised him. His FBI badge rested in his jacket pocket, out of sight, because here, he was not Agent Hayes. He was just Marcus, her boy. Alana moved about the kitchen with a quiet grace, humming an old gospel tune as she plated dinner. Her laughter, warm and unhurried, filled the room when Marcus teased her about the way she fussed over him. Even at 40, she brushed him off, telling him a son never outgrew his mother's care. He remembered how her eyes lit with pride when he spoke, about a recent case he'd closed. That's my son, she'd said, voice firm, as if daring the world to doubt him. To her, his success was not just his own, it was theirs, proof that all her sacrifices had meant something. But shadows lingered at the edges of their peace. The radio, humming faintly in the background, spoke of another police shooting in a nearby county. Marcus caught the way his mother's hands stilled over the stove, the flicker of worry across her face. I don't like the way the world is, Marcus, she whispered. It's changing, and not for the better. He had reached across the table, covering her hand with his. Don't worry, Mama, you're safe. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that carried both love and fear. Neither of them knew those would be the last words of comfort he'd ever give her. The night had started like so many before it. Alana Hayes straightened her navy church dress in the bathroom mirror of the fellowship hall, smoothing the fabric with careful hands. The community gathering had stretched later than usual, singing scripture. Small plates of food passed among neighbors who had known each other for decades. Alana had smiled, chatted, and prayed, her voice carrying softly over the hymns. When it ended, she walked out into the cool Georgia night, clutching her worn Bible to her chest. The parking lot was quiet, half lit by weak yellow strips. She slid into her aging Buick, humming the same gospel tune she had hummed while cooking dinner hours before. The road home was familiar. She had driven it countless times to stop signs, a turn by the gas station, then a long stretch of highway lined with tall pines. A place she should have felt safe, but safety, for a black woman on a southern back road, was a fragile illusion. Behind her, headlights appeared first, distant, then close, too close. Blue and red lights erupted, flashing against her rearview mirror. Her chest tightened. She slowed, signaling, pulling onto the shoulder. Her hands trembled as she cut the engine. 3 patrol cars, 3 officers, too many for a simple stop. The door slammed on the first cruiser. A man's voice cut through the night. Out of the car, now. Her pulse hammered. She rolled down the window, both hands lifted high. Officers, what's wrong? I wasn't speeding, step the fuck out. The second door slammed, then the third. Boots crunched, gravel. They descended like shadows. Alana opened the door slowly, carefully. She stepped out, her Bible still on the passenger seat, her purse slung across her shoulder. She was 62, frail, but her voice trembled with a dignity she had always carried. I'm just trying to get home, she whispered. Rough hands grabbed her wrist. Another shoved her shoulder. She stumbled, falling to the ground. Gravel scraped her cheek. Her glasses flew off, skittering across the pavement. She's resisting, one barked. No, please. She coughed, her asthma tightening her chest. She reached toward her purse. My inhaler, please, I can't breathe. Gun. She's got a gun. 3 shots. Her body jerked once, then stilled. Blood spread in a dark halo beneath her, pooling around her outstretched hand where the inhaler lay plastic, harmless, painted crimson now. Silence. The men stood above her, breath heavy. One cursed under his breath. Another bent quickly, shoving the inhaler back into the purse. We say she reached for something black, shiny. Could have been a gun. You both saw it. The third nodded. Resisted arrest. Reached for a weapon. We followed protocol. They rehearsed the lie before the smoke even cleared. Hours later, Marcus Hayes's phone buzzed on his nightstand. The shrill ring sliced through his half-sleep. He rubbed his eyes, answering. Agent Hayes. The voice was official, clipped. This is the Muskogee County Sheriff's Department. We need you to come down to the county morgue. His stomach dropped. Morgue. It's about your mother. The world tilted. For a moment he couldn't breathe. Words blurred. His mind clawed for reason, for denial. There must be a mistake. My mother's fine. I saw her tonight, she was at church, but deep down, he knew. The drive was a haze. Sirens in the distance blurred into the hum of his tires. When he arrived, the coroner met him with a solemn look, eyes heavy with something between pity and restraint. She was shot, the man said softly. 3 times. Marcus's breath caught in his chest. He felt the room tilt again. The sheet was pulled back, and there she was, still pale. Lips parted slightly as if she might whisper his name one last time. Her church dress was stained deep red. Her hands, folded over her chest, looked impossibly small. He broke. The sound that tore from him was not human, it was grief made raw. Grief made animal. He reached out, trembling, brushing the gray curls from her forehead. Mama, his voice cracked. I promised you were safe. The coroner hesitated, lowering his voice. The report already says she resisted arrest, that she reached for a weapon. Marcus froze, blood roaring in his ears. That's a lie. They'll make it the truth, the man whispered. It's already being written. Outside, the sheriff stood with 2 officers, stone-faced, arms crossed. Their voices were low, conspiratorial. But Marcus caught the words, resisted, weapon, protocol. The cover-up had begun before her blood had dried. He knew then that justice, in its purest sense, was never coming. Not for her, not through the system he had sworn to uphold. And something dark, something buried, began to stir inside him. The night after viewing his mother's body, Marcus Hayes sat alone in his apartment, the silence so loud it pressed against his skull. His badge lay on the kitchen counter, its polished surface catching the dim glow of a single lamp. He stared at it until his vision blurred, the weight of its promise mocking him. Uphold the law, serve justice, protect the innocent. Empty words, dead words. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, his mother's lifeless form on the slab, her dress soaked through, her curls stiff with dried blood. He heard her whisper again, "Don't worry, Marcus. You're safe." The memory of her fragile smile gutted him. He had told her she was safe. He had believed it. Now she was gone. Sleep evaded him. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the city beyond his window. And when exhaustion finally pulled him under, the dreams came, dreams where she was still alive, humming in the kitchen, or calling his name in the pews of their church. But the dreams always ended the same, the screech of tires, the flash of lights, the thunder of gunfire. He woke, drenched in sweat, his chest tight as though a phantom boot pressed into it. Guilt gnawed at him, merciless. He had trained for years to read danger, to anticipate threats, to protect lives. Yet the one life that mattered most, his mother's, he had failed to shield. He was an FBI agent, a man who had hunted murderers and terrorists across the country, but he had not been there to protect her from 3 uniforms with badges and hollow souls. He clutched the Bible she had left on her passenger seat, its leather edges frayed from decades of use. The pages smelled faintly of her lavender and church pew varnish. His throat closed. If I had driven her home that night, the thought shredded him. For 2 days, he tried to channel his anguish into procedure. He met with investigators, listened to the sterile rehearsed language in their reports. Subject resisted. Officers feared for their lives. Discharge of weapons justified. He watched as surveillance footage was conveniently missing. Body cams mysteriously malfunctioning. Witnesses recanted their statements. The system folded in on itself, protecting its own. Marcus sat in his car afterward, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. He had spent a career believing in structure, rules, evidence, the steady grind of justice. But the truth hit him like a blade to the chest. The system would not save his mother. The system had murdered her and would bury the truth alongside her. He went back to work the next morning, wearing his suit, carrying his gun, walking the halls of the bureau as if nothing had changed. His colleagues clapped him on the shoulder, muttered soft condolences. He forced a nod, swallowed his rage. No one suspected the storm carving itself into his bones. At night, though, the mask fell. He poured whiskey into a glass and sat in darkness, staring at the wall as plans began to shape themselves in the shadows. Not plans of petitions or press conferences, not the hollow pursuit of due process. Plans of vengeance. It terrified him, how natural it felt. The precision of his training, the cold efficiency drilled into him by the bureau, all of it whispered to him now, urging him down a path he had once condemned. He found himself imagining the cops' faces, replaying the moment of her death in his mind, but this time with a different ending, their bodies lying broken on the asphalt, not hers. His conscience rebelled. He remembered Quantico, the ethics lectures, the endless oath, do not become what you hunt. He tried to silence the dark voice inside him, telling himself revenge was a poison, that his mother would never want this. But every time he replayed her last words, her desperate cry for breath, her plea for mercy, it fanned the flames. One night, he dreamed differently. He saw her sitting across the kitchen table, hands folded, but this time her voice was stern, commanding. You promised me I was safe. Make it true. He woke with his heart pounding, sweat dripping from his brow, the echo of her voice rattling his skull, and for the first time he didn't resist the thought. He let it in. He began quietly, researching, stalking. He used bureau databases late at night, cloaked under the guise of ongoing cases. He memorized the officers' addresses, their schedules, their routines. The arrogance of men who believed themselves untouchable made it easy. They moved carelessly, laughing in bars, kissing their wives goodnight, never realizing death was already shadowing their steps. Marcus kept it hidden from his colleagues. He told them he was fine, burying his grief beneath a hardened shell. Inside, though, he was crumbling, an agent split between two selves, one bound by the oath of law, the other consumed by a primal hunger for retribution. He stopped answering friends' calls, stopped attending church. His apartment grew darker, colder, cluttered with empty bottles and scattered notes. Each night, he sketched scenarios in his mind, how it would feel to press the barrel against a temple, how the silence afterward would taste, and yet, every time he neared the edge of committing, he faltered. Doubt gnawed at him. Would killing them bring her back? Would it dishonor her memory, or fulfill it? He sat alone, night after night, torn between two identities, Marcus the son, shattered and grieving, and Marcus the agent, sworn to justice. But the bureau could not heal him, the courts would not protect him, and justice, real justice, felt like a ghost slipping through his fingers. So he whispered into the darkness, as if speaking to his mother's spirit, I'll make it right. Mama, I swear I'll make it right. And with that vow, the line between law and vengeance began to blur beyond recognition. I'll make it right. Mama, I swear I'll make it right. Those words echoed in Marcus's chest as he opened the file again, staring at their names. 3 officers who had stolen everything from him. Each name was a knife. Each face, captured in departmental photos, carried the smug ease of men who believed they would never be touched. Officer Daniel Rourke, Officer Kyle Mercer, Sergeant Thomas Avery. Marcus repeated their names like a curse. Daniel Rourke was the youngest, 28, blonde, hair cropped to regulation, jaw sharp, eyes that gleamed with a restless hunger. He had joined the force with dreams of climbing fast, the kind of man who measured success by how quickly his badge could buy him power. His file read like a politician's campaign ad: commendations, community outreach events, a string of heroic arrests. But beneath the medals and smiles lay arrogance sharp enough to cut at the bar. Off-duty, Rourke bragged loudly to anyone who would listen. He boasted about traffic stops that ended with putting a thug in his place, laughed about suspects who cried when cuffed. He spun stories into victories, painting himself as the guardian of order, never mentioning the bruises left behind or the complaints filed against him, complaints that mysteriously disappeared after union reps intervened. Taught to his peers, he was ambitious, driven. To Marcus, he was a predator cloaked in a uniform, desperate to prove his worth by dominating those weaker than him. Kyle Mercer was different, 35, thickset, with a permanent sneer etched into his lips, a man whose insecurities festered into violence. Mercer had always been the boy picked last, the man overlooked, and now he wore the badge like armor, using it to reclaim power he had never earned. His wife bore silent bruises, no one reported. His son avoided his gaze at the dinner table. He drank heavily, fists clenching whenever anyone challenged him. On the streets, he was the cop who escalated first, Who barked louder, shoved harder, drew his weapon quicker than anyone else? Marcus read the complaints: excessive force, intimidation, unnecessary use of a taser, each one buried by the same phrase stamped across reports. Officers feared for their safety. The phrase had become Mercer's shield, his justification for unleashing the violence coiled tight inside him behind closed doors. Mercer told himself he was a soldier in a war, fighting chaos that the weak-willed world refused to acknowledge, but Marcus saw through it. Mercer wasn't a soldier. He was a coward hiding behind fear, a bully who found legitimacy in a uniform. Sergeant Thomas Avery was older, 52, salt and pepper hair, lines etched deep into his face, a man who had once believed in something, maybe, but who had long since traded ideals for resignation. He carried himself with weary authority, the kind of veteran officer who no longer questioned the system because the system had fed him for decades. Avery didn't laugh like Rourke. He didn't rage like Mercer. He sighed, smoked, and looked the other way. His role in Alana's death wasn't born from passion but from apathy. He had stopped seeing people as people long ago. Every traffic stop was routine. Every life another file to close. Marcus imagined him lighting a cigarette after the shooting, the spark briefly illuminating tired eyes. Avery wasn't proud of what they'd done, but he wasn't ashamed either. He told himself it was just another night, another decision, another necessity in a dangerous world. And then he filed the report, signed his name, and went home. Together the three were a perfect storm. Rourke's arrogance, Mercer's violence, Avery's apathy, three shades of corruption bound together by the same shield, the system. Marcus watched it unfold like clockwork. The police union stepped in within hours, issuing statements that praised the officers for their courage under threat. The district attorney's office echoed the language, calling it an unfortunate but necessary use of force. The local news stations replayed the same edited clips of Alana's car pulled over on the side of the road, never showing her lifeless body, never mentioning the inhaler. Commentators filled the airwaves with speculation. Why did she reach for her purse? Why didn't she comply faster? The blame shifted effortlessly from killers to victim. The narrative reshaped until Marcus barely recognized the story they told. It made him sick. The Bureau told him to step back. Conflict of interest, they said. You're too close to this case. As if being her son disqualified him from seeking truth. As if justice required distance, not love. But Marcus wasn't the only one watching. He saw the way people in the community flinched at the names Rourke, Mercer, Avery flinched, but did nothing. Because what could they do? Complaints vanished, lawsuits dragged on until families broke, and juries believed uniforms over corpses. The system didn't just shield these men, it rewarded them. Rourke continued to smile for cameras, his uniform crisp, his ambition undented. Mercer patrolled with renewed confidence, each stop another chance to exert his dominance. Avery smoked quietly in his patrol car, counting the days to retirement, reminding himself that this was just the way things were. Marcus studied them, night after night, their flaws, their families, their routines. He noted the bar where Rourke laughed too loudly, the grocery store where Mercer's wife avoided eye contact, the back porch where Avery sat in silence with his cigarette and his ghosts. The hatred inside Marcus grew, but so did something colder understanding. These men weren't monsters born in shadows. They were men shaped by arrogance, fear, and resignation. But that didn't absolve them. It damned them all the more. Because men like this didn't stop. They didn't wake up and repent. They only grew bolder, protected by a world that bent rules for them, erased their sins, rewrote their crimes as heroism. And Marcus knew, with a clarity that burned like fire, that no court would ever hold them accountable. No judge would strip them of their power. That burden had fallen to him. He closed the file, his mother's face rising in his mind, her lifeless eyes staring upward. The three names echoed again, etched into his bones. Rourke, Mercer, Avery. They had taken everything from him, and soon he would take everything from them. Rourke, Mercer, Avery. Their names had carved themselves into Marcus's mind like scars. Every morning he woke with them on his tongue. Every night he went to bed with their faces burned into the darkness behind his eyes. But this time, he wasn't just grieving. He was watching, waiting, moving. Marcus began quietly. His bureau training gave him access, and he used it like a scalpel. He ran their addresses, cell records, work shifts. He mapped their movements the way he once mapped terrorist networks. He traced their routines until he knew them better than they knew themselves. Rourke, the ambitious one, spent Thursday nights at O'Malley's bar, laughing too loud, knocking back beers with rookie cops who hung on his every word. Mercer, the brute, drove his son to football practice every Saturday morning, then retreated to a dive bar where he drank until the world blurred. Avery, the old sergeant, preferred solitude, cigarettes on his back porch, whiskey in hand, staring out into the dark like a man already half buried. Marcus drove by their houses in silence, engine off, watching from the shadows. The first few times, his stomach churned, bile rising in his throat. It felt wrong. It felt criminal. But then he would remember his mother's face, blood pooling beneath her eyes wide with terror, and the sickness hardened into resolve. Still, the voice inside him argued, "You're an FBI agent. You swore an oath. This isn't justice. This is murder." He silenced it with another memory, her whisper, "Please, I can't breathe." The system had left him no choice. He started with Rourke, the ambitious one, the cocky one, the one who believed himself untouchable. Marcus followed him for 2 weeks, memorizing every step. He knew the bar Rourke drank at, the side streets he stumbled down, the alley where he parked his car. Marcus learned his schedule so well he could predict when Rourke would raise his glass before he did it. The night, Marcus decided, was cold and damp, the kind of night that kept people indoors. He parked 3 blocks away, his hood up, his hands steady despite the storm raging inside him. His heart beat fast, but not with fear, with clarity. Rourke emerged from O'Malley's near midnight, laughter echoing down the street. His arm slung around another officer's shoulder. They parted ways at the corner, Rourke swaggering alone toward his car. He pulled his keys from his pocket, fumbling slightly, whistling a tune. Marcus stepped from the shadows. Officer Rourke. The young cop froze, turning, confusion flashing across his face. Who the hell? Marcus moved fast, his training precise. A hand to the throat, a shove into the alley, the sound of struggle muffled by the night. Rourke hit the brick wall with a grunt, eyes wide, recognition dawning too late. "You killed her," Marcus hissed, voice low, trembling with rage. "My mother." Rourke tried to speak, to summon arrogance, but the words caught in his throat. Marcus pressed the gun into his ribs, close, intimate. "Do you remember her face?" Marcus demanded. "Do you remember the woman begging for her inhaler while you stood there, while you pulled the trigger?" Rourke's lips parted, but no denial came. His silence was louder than any confession. Marcus pulled the trigger once. The sound was swallowed by the night. Rourke's body crumpled against the wall, sliding down until he sat lifeless, eyes still wide with disbelief. Marcus stood over him, chest heaving. The gun felt heavy in his hand. His stomach churned again, not with guilt alone but with a sick satisfaction that terrified him. He had crossed the line. There was no going back. For a long moment, he couldn't move. His gaze locked on the blood spreading across Rourke's shirt, the life leaking away from the man who had stolen his mother's. He felt horror at what he'd done, but beneath it, something darker stirred, a grim sense of balance, a hollow justice. Finally, he forced himself to walk away, his steps echoing in the empty alley, each one heavier than the last. That night, he sat alone in his apartment, staring at his trembling hands. He had taken a life, not in combat, not in defense, but in vengeance. The oath he had sworn was shattered. He poured whiskey into a glass and drank until the shaking stopped, but the guilt did not fade. He saw his mother in his mind, her smile soft, her hands folded in prayer. Would she forgive me? But then he remembered her broken body on the pavement, the silence of the sheriff's office, the lies printed in the papers. Forgiveness felt like a luxury he no longer deserved. He whispered into the empty room, "One down." The next morning, news broke quietly. Local officer found dead in alleyway. No investigation ongoing. The department scrambled. The union roared. But Marcus knew they would never suspect him. Not yet. At the bureau, he wore his mask. He nodded at colleagues, sat through briefings, pretended to review files. Inside, though, he was unraveling, half man, half ghost, carrying a secret that pulsed louder with each heartbeat. But he also felt something else. Momentum. The path was set. Rourke's death had not brought peace, but it had opened a door Marcus could no longer close. The hunger for balance gnawed at him, urging him forward. Mercer was next. Then Avery. The line between agent and avenger had been erased in a single gunshot, and Marcus Hayes, once sworn to uphold the law, now carried a new vow in his heart: "I will make them all pay." One down. The words Marcus had whispered in the silence of his apartment clung to him like a stain, but now the echo carried beyond his walls into precincts, newsrooms, and corridors of power. Officer Daniel Rourke's death sent ripples through the city. Patrol cars doubled their presence. Reporters crowded police headquarters, cameras flashing as the Union president thundered about a targeted war against law enforcement. The DA promised swift justice. And behind closed doors, whispered conversations carried a single truth Marcus could taste in the air. They would hunt for whoever dared strike a badge. He watched the chaos unfold with a hollow detachment, but inside, tension coiled tighter each day. At the bureau, the case landed in his lap. Task force assistants, fate, or irony, placed him among the very investigators chasing himself. Files stacked on his desk, grainy photos of Rourke's body, ballistics reports, witness interviews. Each detail screamed at him, daring him to slip. He forced his face into the mask of professionalism, answering questions, offering analysis, even suggesting leads he knew would go nowhere. But not everyone was convinced. "Something's off with you, Marcus." The words came from Special Agent David Lang, his closest colleague. One night as they left the office, Lang had been his partner on more cases than he could count. A man who had shared long nights, near misses, and beers after victories. Lang's eyes now studied him with quiet suspicion. "You're different," Lang said carefully. "Since your mum, I get it, man, I do. But this case, you're too close." "I see it." Marcus forced a tight smile. "I'm fine, just tired." But Lang didn't smile back. The community stirred too. Some whispered that Rourke's death was divine justice, a reckoning for sins the courts ignored. In church basements and barber shops, voices lowered as they speculated about who might have done it. Some dared to hope Marcus's mother had been avenged by unseen hands, but others worried. His aunt, a sharp-eyed woman who had raised him almost as much as his mother, grabbed his arm one evening as he visited. "Marcus, you can't carry this hate. It'll eat you alive. Your mama wouldn't want this." He swallowed hard, forcing calm. "I'm just doing my job, Auntie." She studied him, her gaze cutting deeper than she realized. "Don't lie to me, boy. I see the fire in you. It's the same fire that killed your mama. Don't let it turn you into them." Her words burned, but when Marcus lay awake that night, replaying the memory of Rourke's lifeless body slumped in the alley, the flame only grew. Mercer was next. Marcus stalked him like a shadow. He followed him to his son's football practices, watched from the bleachers as the boy ran drills while Mercer barked instructions from the sidelines. For a brief, jarring moment, Marcus saw not a monster but a father, loud, overbearing, flawed, yet present. The boy's laughter pierced him, stirring doubts. But then, later that night, Marcus followed Mercer to a bar. He watched as the man grew drunk, aggressive, shoving a bartender, cursing at strangers. The mask of fatherhood slipped away, replaced by the brute who had shoved Alana Hayes into gravel. Marcus cornered him in the alley behind the bar. The confrontation was quick, brute hands around Mercer's throat, whispers of his mother's name as life drained from his eyes. Mercer clawed, gasped, but the whiskey dulled his fight. When his body went limp, Marcus staggered back, chest heaving, horror and satisfaction mingling again. 2 down. By the time Mercer's death hit the news, the city was on edge. 2 cops dead in 2 weeks. The union called it a targeted execution campaign. The governor ordered a joint task force, bringing state and federal resources. Marcus sat in briefings, listening to strategies designed to catch himself. Each word tightened the vice. Lang watched him closer now. In the cafeteria, in the hallways, his partner's gaze lingered too long. "If there's something you're not telling me," Lang said one afternoon, leaving the sentence unfinished. Marcus forced a laugh. "What, you think I'm out there hunting cops?" Lang didn't laugh. "I think you're drowning, and I don't want to lose you to it." Marcus turned away before his mask cracked. The community fractured further. Some praised the deaths as justice the courts would never deliver. Others feared retaliation, more traffic stops ending in blood. Marcus received messages, anonymous emails, whispered calls from strangers urging him to keep going or to stop before they kill us all. He deleted them, but the words burrowed deep. And still, he grew more ruthless, more paranoid. He changed his routes home. He wiped down everything he touched. He checked over his shoulder constantly, scanning crowds, convinced every pair of eyes lingered too long. But paranoia didn't stop him, it only sharpened him. That left Avery, the old sergeant, smoked on his back porch most nights, a glass of whiskey in hand, staring into nothing. Marcus watched from the shadows, night after night, the urge to strike burning hotter. But Avery was different, not arrogant like Rourke, not brutish like Mercer. His silence unsettled Marcus, made him hesitate. Was it guilt, or resignation? Did Avery remember Alana's face? Did it haunt him, the way Marcus's mother haunted him? The hesitation nearly cost him. One night, as Marcus circled Avery's neighborhood, headlights flared behind him. A patrol car. His chest tightened as the siren whooped. He pulled over, breath shallow, as 2 officers approached. Their flashlights cut through his window. ID-1 demanded. Marcus handed over his bureau credentials, his heart pounding. For a long moment, silence hung. Then the officer nodded stiffly and stepped back. "You're good to go, Agent Hayes." The implication chilled him. They knew his name. They knew who he was. As he drove away, sweat soaked his shirt. The system was circling him now, its net tightening. At the bureau, Lang cornered him again. "Tell me the truth, Marcus. Are you involved?" Marcus's stomach clenched. He forced anger into his voice. "You think I'm killing cops? After what they did to my mother?" Lang's jaw tightened. "That's exactly why I think it. Because you have motive, because you have training, and because I can see it in your eyes." For a moment, Marcus wanted to confess, to unburden himself, but the fire inside him smothered the impulse. He walked away without a word, leaving Lang's suspicion hanging heavy. Auntie's words returned to, sharp as glass. Don't let it turn you into them, but he already had. Each kill stripped another piece of his humanity. Each lighter Lang dug him deeper. Each glance in the mirror revealed a man he barely recognized. Yet still, the vow burned. "I'll make it right, Mama." And so he prepared for Avery. The resistance was everywhere, now within the system, within his family, within himself. Betrayal lingered close. Suspicion nipped at his heels. But Marcus Hayes pressed forward, more ruthless, more paranoid, more consumed by the fire of vengeance than ever before. The line was gone. The system was closing in, and the final confrontation loomed. The net was closing. Marcus felt it with every step, every breath. Lang's eyes on him at the bureau, the whispered words in his aunt's kitchen, the silent patrol car that lingered too long outside his apartment before driving on. But none of it mattered now. Only one name remained, Sergeant Thomas Avery. The old man, the silent one, the one who hadn't laughed or sneered but had stood there all the same, watching as Alana Hayes bled into asphalt. The one who had signed the false report, lent his authority to the lie, and gone home to his whiskey. Marcus couldn't let him fade quietly into retirement, not while his mother's voice still echoed in the darkness. He chose a Friday night. Avery's schedule was predictable: patrol paperwork, then home by 10. On his porch by 10:30, a cigarette already burning, his glass already half full. Marcus parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest, hood low, gun heavy at his side. His pulse thundered, but his movements were calm, precise. This wasn't stalking anymore. This wasn't preparation. This was the end. From the shadows across the street, he watched Avery sit, smoke curling into the night. The man looked older than his years, shoulders sagging under invisible weight, his eyes fixed on the dark woods beyond his yard, as if waiting for ghosts to emerge. Marcus stepped out of the shadows. "Avery." The sergeant flinched, turning his head. His hand hovered near his holster, but Marcus already had the gun raised. "Don't." Avery's eyes narrowed. "Who the hell?" Then recognition flickered. The name he'd read in reports, the son who had stared at his mother's broken body in the morgue. Hayes. Marcus's jaw clenched. "You remember me?" Avery exhaled smoke, his voice steady but low. "You don't want to do this." Marcus crossed the yard slowly, the gun unwavering. "You watched her die. You let them kill her, and you signed off on the lie." Avery's expression hardened, but his voice carried no arrogance, no ragist resignation. "I've seen worse. I've seen this city eat itself alive. You think you know justice, son, but you don't. Out here, it's survival. Your mama, she was in the wrong place, wrong time. Bad choices, bad moment." Marcus's grip tightened, fury boiling. "Don't you dare blame her." "I'm not blaming," Avery muttered, sipping his whiskey. "I'm telling you the truth. Sometimes good people die. It's ugly, it's wrong, but it's the way of things. You think killing me changes that?" Marcus stepped closer, pressing the barrel against Avery's temple. "It's not about changing the world. It's about making sure you don't walk away from what you did." Avery moved faster than Marcus expected for a man his age. His arm shot up, knocking the gun aside. The shot cracked into the porch rail as Avery lunged, tackling Marcus into the ground. The gun skidded across the deck. They grappled, fists flying. Marcus's rage gave him strength, but Avery's years gave him grit. Knuckles split, blood smeared. Marcus drove his knee into Avery's ribs, forcing a grunt. Avery slammed an elbow into Marcus's jaw, stars bursting behind his eyes. It was raw, brutal, no tactics, no training, just men tearing each other apart under the weight of ghosts. Marcus pinned him, fists pounding, until Avery's face slicked red. But the old sergeant fought back, grabbing Marcus by the throat, squeezing with surprising strength. Marcus gasped, vision tunneling, until his hand found a shard of broken glass from the spilled whiskey. He slashed it across Avery's arm, forcing him to recoil. They staggered to their feet, both heaving, both broken. The gun lay between them. For a long suspended moment, neither moved. Their eyes locked, one filled with rage, the other with weary defiance. Then they lunged. Marcus got there first. His fingers closed around the gun, his body twisting as Avery slammed into him. They struggled, the barrel wavering, breaths ragged. Marcus snarled, voice shaking, "Say her name." Avery bared his teeth, spitting blood. She was just another stop. The words snapped something inside Marcus. He drove the gun forward, pressing it against Avery's chest. His finger squeezed the trigger. Bang! The sound ripped through the night. Avery jerked, coughed, blood spilling down his shirt. He collapsed onto the porch, gasping, eyes wide in disbelief. Marcus stood over him, chest heaving, smoke curling from the barrel. But Avery didn't die immediately. He wheezed, blood bubbling at his lips, his gaze still locked on Marcus. "You think you're different from me," he rasped. "You've become the same, cold, merciless." Marcus's hands trembled. He wanted to deny it, to scream that he was nothing like them, but the words caught in his throat, because Avery was right. He saw it then, his reflection in the porch window. Blood-smeared face, eyes wild, gun in hand. Not an agent, not a son, just another killer. The silence pressed heavy. Avery's breaths slowed, his body sagging. Finally, his chest stilled. The last cop, the last name, gone. Marcus staggered back, dropping the gun. His body shook, his mind spinning. He had avenged his mother. He had taken every life that had stolen hers, and yet he felt nothing but emptiness. He collapsed onto the porch steps, staring at his hands. They were slick with blood of Avery's, Rourke's, Mercer's, his mother's in memory. Hands that once swore to protect life, now marked only by death. In the distance, sirens wailed. He didn't know if they were for him, or just another night in the city. But they sounded closer. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out with shaking fingers. Lang's name flashed on the screen. For a moment, Marcus considered answering, confessing everything, begging someone to pull him out of the abyss. But he let it ring. He sat in silence, staring at the body before him. The man who had been his mother's final executioner. The man who had reminded him, with his dying breath, that revenge had carved Marcus into the same kind of monster he'd sworn to destroy. Tears burned his eyes, but he didn't wipe them. He let them fall, mixing with the blood on his skin. He whispered again, barely audible, "Mama, I made it right." But even as the words left his lips, he knew they were a lie. Nothing had been made right. The world was not healed. His mother was still gone. All that remained was the hollow echo of vengeance and the shattered man it had left behind. The sirens grew louder. Marcus sat on Avery's porch steps, staring at the lifeless body sprawled across the wooden boards, his chest still heaving, his hands sticky with blood. He didn't move, couldn't for a brief, fragile moment. The world held still. He had done it. All three were gone. His mother's killers were dead. The vow had been fulfilled. But the silence that followed wasn't peace. It was emptiness, cold and unrelenting. The news broke within hours. Third officer slain in string of attacks. Is there a cop killer among us? Communities divided as fear and anger spread. Television anchors leaned on the same words again and again. Targeted, execution style, systematic. The police union called for vengeance. The governor promised sweeping crackdowns. But in back rooms and whispered corners, another conversation bloomed. Some called the killings justice. People who had lost brothers, cousins, friends to police violence, spoke of Marcus's unknown hand with reverence, even as they feared the blowback. To them, the Avenger was not a villain but a ghost of accountability, carving blood where the courts refused. Others recoiled in horror. Ministers preached about sin. Community leaders begged for peace. His aunt wept in her living room, clutching the Bible Alana had once held, whispering prayers for her nephew's lost soul. The city was fractured, half cheering in secret, half cowering in dread, and Marcus, hidden away in his apartment, felt both their cheers and their fear piercing him like blades. The bureau tightened its grip, task forces swelled, profiles were drawn, and Marcus knew, with each passing day, the circle was closing around him. He wasn't just a hunter anymore, he was prey. Lang came knocking one night. "Marcus," he said through the door. His voice carried the weight of truth already discovered. "I know it's you." Marcus stood frozen inside, his gun in hand, every nerve on fire. "You think no one noticed?" Lang's tone was low, almost pleading. "I've worked beside you too long. The way you carry yourself, the silence, the ice, you're not fooling me. But damn it, Marcus, you were my brother. Tell me you didn't do it." Marcus's throat ached. For one searing moment, He wanted to open the door, to confess everything, to collapse into his partner's arms and surrender the weight. But he didn't. He stayed silent. Eventually Lang's footsteps faded down the hall, leaving the silence heavier than ever. Marcus stopped going to work after that. His apartment became his world, shadows and silence. Empty bottles lining the counter, files scattered across the floor. He unplugged his phone, ignored knocks at the door, drew the blinds until no light touched the walls. Sleep came in short, violent bursts, filled with his mother's voice. Sometimes she smiled, calling him my boy. Other times she stared at him with those lifeless eyes, whispering, "You've become them." He didn't know which vision was worse. The community outside shifted with each headline. Protests flared, candles burned on street corners, chants of justice for Alana mixed with cries of "Stop the killing." His name never appeared, but he saw it in their eyes when he dared to step outside in disguise. Some looked at him with quiet gratitude, others with suspicion, even fear. He was no longer just Marcus Hayes, the son, the agent. He was a myth now, a monster to some, a savior to others. Neither felt true. Weeks passed before the knock came again. This time, it wasn't Lang. It was louder, sharper, rhythmic, the kind of knock that carried authority. "FBI, open the door." Marcus froze, heart slamming. He thought of running, of shooting, of surrendering, but he did none of those things. He sat quietly in the dark, breathing shallow, listening as the knocking turned to pounding, then to silence. Eventually, footsteps retreated, but he knew they'd be back. The noose was tightening, and soon, there would be no escape. One night, unable to stand the silence, Marcus pulled out an old photo album. He turned the pages slowly, fingers tracing the edges of pictures worn soft from years of touch. There was his mother, laughing in the kitchen. His mother in her Sunday dress, Bible clutched tight. His mother holding him as a boy, her face lit with pride and hope. Tears blurred the images. He whispered to the pictures, to the silence, to the ghost that haunted every breath. "Did I honor you, Mama? Or did I betray you?" The question hung heavy. No answer came. He thought of her warnings, her faith, her belief in forgiveness. He thought of her voice telling him the world was dangerous, but insisting it could still be endured with grace. And then he thought of the blood, the lies, the laughter of men who never thought they'd pay. He had avenged her, but at what cost? The final scene of Marcus Hayes' life wasn't a shootout, or a courtroom, or even an arrest. It was silence. He sat alone in his apartment, the weight of everything pressing down on him. In front of him sat a single framed photo, his mother, smiling, alive. The photo he had pulled from her living room before the funeral. Her eyes shone with love, with pride, with everything he had lost. The rest of the apartment was empty, dark, hollow, stripped of purpose. Marcus stared at the photo for hours, as if willing it to speak, as if her voice might cut through the silence and forgive him, or condemn him, or simply tell him what to do. But the picture remained still. His hands trembled, his chest ached. He whispered once more, the words cracking under the weight of his grief. "I made it right, didn't I?" No answer, just the echo of his own broken voice. Outside, the city hummed on Saron's wailing, lives moving, the world unchanged. His mother was still gone. The system was still intact, and Marcus Hayes was no longer a son, no longer an agent, just a hollow man devoured by vengeance. The story ended not with triumph, but with tragedy, and the question it left hanging in the air was one Marcus could never escape, and one the world itself would never answer. Was it worth it?